Welcome, fearfully and wonderfully made human. Today is a special day for me, one that's been years in the making. My journey toward finding the healthiest ways of eating began decades ago. And when I tried a recipe from Sally Fallon's Nourishing Traditions cookbook, it led me to the Weston A. Foundation. Instantly, I knew I had found my tribe. Since then, listening to the Wise Traditions podcast has been a constant source of encouragement, especially through those tough, isolating years during the pandemic. Wow. And now here we are. What an honor to introduce my guest, Hilda Labrada Gore, also known as Holistic Hilda. Hilda is a certified health coach and an experiential. Did I say that right? Experiential?
Experiential.
Anthropologist, having explored traditional practices across the globe, from Mongolia to Kenya to Peru and beyond. She is the host and producer of the Wise Traditions podcast, which has garnered over 14 million downloads. Her energy is contagious, and I can't wait to dive into the wisdom she shares on her podcast, YouTube channel, and at conferences. Holistic Hilda, I'm truly blessed to have you here today. Welcome.
Diana, I am so glad to be with you. I also feel very touched by that introduction, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like you shine a lot, like through your voice. And now that I found you on YouTube too, because I was always listening on podcasts, I'm like, oh my goodness, this woman. And your emails, like I signed up for your email, and I know you have a venture coming for you and through you. So let's get started though. I want to know about Dr. Weston A. Price. You know, why is his work so significant in today's world?
That is a great question. So he was a dentist researcher from the 1930s. Okay. And you might even think, well, so who cares? Like there's been so many researchers and people exploring how do we live our healthiest, best lives. But his work was unique, Diana, because he took 10 years to visit over 14 countries. He was looking for the healthiest people on the planet. He was literally boots on the ground researching. He would go to remote indigenous tribes and he would take detailed notes about their health and their health practices. He noticed, being a dentist also, he noticed how broad their smiles were, the incidence of cavities that they had, but he also noticed their diet and their other lifestyle ways. And he wrote all of these things down, and he wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Okay. And his conclusions were kind of world shattering. And they're so important now more than ever, I would say, because he was calling us to live as these untouched people groups did, because they were exhibiting vibrant health, beautiful broad faces with room for all of their teeth, hardly any cavities, fertility, optimism, resilience, all the things that we want, right? And that we're lacking desperately nowadays. Yes. And so his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, documents all the different countries he visited and what he found. And even if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't read that book, who has time? Well, first of all, I'd say get an audiobook version. Hopefully it's out there. But the other thing is, if you get the physical book, you can just look at the pictures. Wow. And the pictures, as they say, are worth 1,000 words, because you see these happy, healthy people with the broad smiles contrasted with those who began to eat the displacing foods of modern commerce, as Dr. Price called them, whose faces became more narrow. The next generation's faces were more narrow, who had cavities and chronic disease conditions. You can see their health being kind of robbed from them by the modern convenient foods. So this is really a cautionary tale for us today. And I found it so riveting. I decided to follow in his footsteps. So not only do I make the podcast for the Weston A. Price Foundation, but I was like, I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to see if I can still find people holding on to their traditions to see what I can learn from them.
Wow. And what have you found? Honestly, like what have you seen? Because I know I watch you, I follow you and everything. Yes. So I know you've been traveling, and I'm like, this is amazing, because we live in such an ethnocentric culture here in America. I love my country. I was born here, but I also know my family was out of other countries. So I have a better understanding of an opener, is that the word? Mind of understanding that there's different cultures we can learn from and have that understanding. So Tell me, like, what?
I'll tell you. I'll
Yeah.
tell you a few of the things I've noticed. One is the power of community.
Mm,
And this is often overlooked. But whether I was in Mongolia or
hmm.
Ethiopia or in Ecuador or Peru, I found peoples who still relied on one another. You know, the
Yeah.
mothers who are tearing their hair out and they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. How am I supposed to, work out and provide good food for my family and then change the baby's diaper and then have my
Right.
part-time job? How am I supposed to do it all? Here's
Right.
a message for you. You're not supposed to do it all.
Ooh.
You're supposed to have a community where you can pass the baby off to the aunt who will hold it while you're making the broth, or someone who will take care of the baby so that you can rest when you're exhausted. Like we were meant for each other. I'll never forget either when I got to Alaska at one point and I was talking to a young Inuit man of the Athapascan tribe, I think it was called. And he said, we used to live in these community homes that could house like 300 people in our tribe. He said, until the government came and said, we're here to help you. And they started building single family
Mm,
units for homes and
wow.
everything changed,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I mean, that's just one thing I've seen. I've seen the importance of actually grounding, going barefoot. When I was in Ethiopia, I got to see 5 tribes in the Omo Valley. These people really were untouched by modern world. They had no chips or snacks or sodas. They were eating their traditional foods. They were still hunting. They were even pointing out trees. And one of the tribes, I think it was the Dasanach, they were like, that's the tree that we use its bark when one of us has yellow fever. Like they were showing me all their ancient wisdom ways. And I couldn't help but notice all the kids were barefoot. And
Mm,
that, of course, as you know, gives us the connection to the Earth's natural resonance.
hmm.
And I like to call it kind of the Earth's blueberries or antioxidants because they help kind of bond to free radicals that are cancer causing. Anyway, the earth just has so much good stuff to give us.
Yes.
And what's funny, Diana, I'll tell you quickly, side note. So I was going around with a translator and guide who said to me, hey, Hilda, I'm trying to like raise money so we can get the kids shoes.
Mm,
I didn't say anything, but I was thinking,
don't
you
do
don't know
it.
what you're doing. Exactly, because we
And
need
if,
to be
yeah.
more often barefoot. Like
Yeah.
we in the modern world, we're so insulated. We've got our
Hmm.
cars with the rubber tires and we've got our shoes with the rubber soles and we're
Right.
inside most of the time and we're not getting that natural electrons that come from the
Right.
earth that are really helping protect our health and keeping us well. And that's just one, those are just a couple of the examples. I guess I do want to say a third one is that when I was in Peru,
Hmm.
I met some children way high up in these mountains outside of Cusco, and their faces were ruddy, but not from acne or eczema, but literally from the sun they were taking in. And I thought, oh my goodness, I couldn't help but contrast their countenance and complexion and their health with the university students in the city in Lima when I went there later,
Mm,
because the Lima students were pale. They were hunched over. They were students, so they spent most of their time under fluorescent light. And
yes.
the difference between the two groups of people was palpable. And so I'm like, okay, I want, what Dr. Price saw. I want to spend more time in the sunshine. I want to be barefoot outside. I want to be nourishing myself deeply with the traditional foods that have served us since the beginning of time. So what I've seen as I've traveled only backs up what he observed over 100 years ago, practically now.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was reading about a little bit about him, and I did join the Weston A. Price Foundation here down, I'm in Broward County, but I think Palm Beach was the closest one, and it was a drive, but it's worth it to go to some of the meetings. Um, and I understand like it does go against modern thought processes. Honestly, I'm literally like people hire me. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, but I'm a holistic therapist and I teach them because I have so many 25 to 35-year-olds coming in with so many issues. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, when was the last time you touched grass? Well, what do you mean? Smoke grass? I'm like, no, touched grass. You're already doing like that just because of the anxiety. And you're
Yeah.
right. And I turn them on to your podcast, honestly.
Oh,
And
oh
they're
my gosh,
like,
thank you so much. Because these things are so simple, Diana. I think
yes.
it's easy to kind of discount them and be like, oh, whatever,
Yeah,
right?
it's too easy.
But those young people
Right.
that you're seeing, I bet you 9 out of 10 of them are on their phones first thing. So they're
Yes.
scrolling and they're
Hmm.
on their phones late at night and forget, the addictive persuasive powers of that device. I'm
Yes.
just talking about the light that they're also getting. That blue light interferes with their circadian rhythm. So what
Mhm.
happens is they're not sleeping as profoundly, they're not detoxing, their circadian rhythm is out of whack. And so of course they're going to get depressed. They're seeking kind of a boost of energy from a device that's draining
Right.
them of the same. So
Yes.
I'm so glad that you're pointing them in the direction of wise traditions, and I hope we can be of help in that regard.
Oh, no, for sure. Okay, so let's go with so for those who find themselves as the only ones in their community believing that things like sun exposure, eating meat, and avoiding EMFs are essential, how can they connect with like-minded individuals and find support? Because that is something, like you said, like in a city life, or I'm in Broward County, there's probably like 2.2 million people in this county alone, and I tried to find that community. I mean, like I said, I sometimes travel to Palm Beach to meet, but it's really hard when it goes against the grain of what we're being, I hate to say, brainwashed with you know what I'm talking about,
I
commercial, everything, because
do.
it's about like, it shouldn't be that easy to be healthy. Like that's the mentality in our culture. It's like, no, we need this, we need that, we need a biohack, we need, even in the health realm,
Yep.
it's a money making machine either way. And I tell people, like, you're either going to pay money for prevention or intervention, but honestly, prevention is free.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, so many of the most beautiful health hacks are absolutely free. Getting your feet on the ground, getting the sun in your eyes and on your skin. And it feels upside down because, as you pointed out, the propaganda is quite the opposite. It's wear these sunglasses, cover up from the sun. We've got a drug, Ozempic, that you can take for weight loss. Like we look to pills and programs and prescriptions and physicians for good health when it's actually found in ancient wisdom. And most of it is free, as you've said. So how do we connect with the people who think like we do? Well, it's a different time now. So it used to be people lived in small villages and they could just connect with the people who lived around them. And now it's both a blessing and a challenge that we're all kind of all over the world. We
Yeah.
can connect through technology, which I'm thankful for. But nothing beats being in person, in my opinion. So I do my best to participate in events periodically where I'm not just going solo to some,
Right.
far-flung country. I'm at the Wise Traditions Conference in Orlando, Florida this year, by the way. I'd love to give you a hug in
When?
person there. That is
When?
October 25th to the 27th.
Okay,
Yep, I'll
wonderful.
be there. I'll be there.
Okay.
Then I'm going to Mexico in September. I don't know when this is airing, but with a thing called Ferment Oaxaca. So I
Hmm.
am being intentional about
Right.
finding my tribe. But if you're
Hmm.
like, oh, I can't afford those trips, I've got
Hmm.
3 little kids, I got you. Because I raised 4 kids in 5 years. It was quite a busy time.
Wow.
Go to your farmer's market because at least the people there are interested in fresh food. Now,
Hmm.
not all of them will be aligned with you, but that's a great place to hang out. Start talking to your farmer. I used to honestly be intimidated by the people behind the table because I was like, oh, their life is so different from mine. I'm the city
Yeah.
mouse, they're the country mouse. But you start asking questions. At Easter, I met a farmer because he sold ham, and I was like, hey, I really would like this, kind of smoked ahead of time. He's like, I can do that for you. And we started chatting, and now we're friends. I'm like, he knows me. And I saw him at Joel's farm recently. Like, it's just so much fun. So I would say go to your farmer's market.
Hmm.
Or as you were suggesting, Diana, you can go to the westinaprice.org website
Okay.
and go to the find food or local chapters. See if there's a chapter near you. At the very least, you'll find if there is, and if that person sometimes has these get-togethers, like you said, these meetings now and then. A meeting sounds too formal, but literally we'll
Right.
have potlucks. I'm a chapter leader where
Gatherings.
I live. Yeah, gatherings of
Ooh,
people who feel
yeah.
similarly and who think the sun is good for you, meat is awesome for you, and it's not bad for the planet, all the things. So these people are around. And then I would say, on the lowest tier of connection is virtual. I
Hmm.
am establishing a thing I'm calling a holistic hub this fall because I'm like, I want to encourage people and I want to encourage them deeply. And why not use this tool of technology to help them realize they're not alone because they're not,
Exactly.
right? So I'm
Right.
actually going to be doing on there a private podcast, believe it or not, where I can
Ah,
just share my uncensored thoughts because, like you, I'm the host
yes.
of a show, but I make it for
Hmm.
the Weston A. Price Foundation. My goal is to lift up the information in the guest and not to say what I know. But
Hmm.
after like 9 years of doing this, I've learned a thing or two. Plus, I'm certified by the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to be a
I
health
love
coach and all
that.
this. So I have my own thoughts I want to share. I'm like, where can I do it? Yeah, I do it on Instagram. Yeah, I do it on YouTube. But I was like, let me find a private space for a more deeper kind of connection and community. So I'm working on that too. But I bet all this to say, if you look for it, you'll find it. Just, open your eyes, see what's in your immediate vicinity. And if
Right.
you need to, go virtual. But notice that that's the lowest tier in my estimation.
Yeah. I know that you started I want to say like a coaching group, or you've talked, I've heard you speak on other people's podcasts too, not just Wise Tradition, like Low Tox Life, I think you might have been on, or I listen to so many different, but you were talking about the ancestral, the ancestral wisdoms or something like that that you know
Yes.
about. I mean, I know you don't want to give out all the information and we don't have that much time, but I would love to, is there something like something practical or encouraging for the audience?
Yes, and thank you for asking me. I'm actually going to take off my jacket because I'm getting excited now. I'm warming up here. Um, I am really excited because practical is the word. Diana, I used to be a translator, and the idea was to take words in another language, I would do Spanish or French, and put
Okay.
them into the target language so that it would flow beautifully and be very accessible. And so, what I do now is I kind of synthesize the information I get from experts and even from indigenous peoples around the world, and I put it out in a way that's easy to apply to our
Hmm.
lives. Because
Okay.
I think, what good is the head knowledge if you can't live it out?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know nourishing food is going to be local, traditional, seasonal, and organic. But
Right.
so what if I don't know how to find it, right? So I'm
Right.
all about the practical. So, yes, to summarize, I have 6 ancestral secrets that I apply to my life pretty much every day and that I like to encourage people to apply to their lives as well. And so the first one is my favorite. So I'll just start with that. And it's sunshine. And
Mm.
this I totally overlooked, even though it was staring me right in the face or right above my head, however you want to look at it. Because I was a fitness professional for years. So I would wake up in the morning, give my kids breakfast, we'd hop in the car, I'd drop them off at school, I'd go to the gym, teach my class, stop at the grocery store, pick them up, back home. You get the idea. If I
Yes.
spent
Superwoman.
15 minutes, well, yeah, well, not just
Well,
Superwoman.
that's the pressure we have in this culture,
Yes,
honestly. I get
yes.
it.
But what I mean is, if
Yes.
I spent 15 minutes outside, like that was the
Mm-hmm.
most I was getting, I did not know
Mm-hmm.
that the sun is essentially like a multivitamin in the sky.
Yes.
It informs all of the systems in the body. And when we neglect to get that sunlight,
Mm-hmm.
our hormonal function suffers, our cognitive function, there can even be weight gain and systemic issues. Our digestion is impaired, if not impinged. And so, what we need to do is get more of the sun in our lives. So,
Right.
more natural, less artificial. So, what I do now, and this is so different from the years when I was teaching those exercise classes and even as a health coach, because I didn't know the sun was a part of our health. What I do now is I do sunrise before screen rise. And
Mm.
a friend and I coined that phrase together, and I love it because I'm not saying you can't look at your phone, but whatever you do, don't look at it first thing
Right.
because the light spectrum of that device is different than the light you'll get from the sun.
Right.
And the first burst of sunlight that you get right at sunrise is I guess I would call it a protective spectrum of light. So there's no UVA or UVB in the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
but it does have just the right combination that goes to I think it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus in our brain. And it's the master clock that tells all the other clocks in our cells what time of day it is. You
Yeah.
might be like, oh, who cares if I'm synced to my circadian rhythm? I don't even know what that
Oh
means.
no. Yeah.
No, but you
Yeah.
do. But
Yeah.
not
You
everybody knows that what it
right.
does is it kind of puts you in tune with nature and with your body, and
Mm.
it helps you sleep more profoundly.
Mm-hmm.
It helps your body know when it's daytime and when it's nighttime. It signals the right time for your melatonin to be released so you can sleep more profoundly. I mean, all the things. It's sleep, it's daytime cognitive function and energy. It's even, I have a friend who only tried this for 2 weeks. He tried sunrise before screen rise. He got out
Mm.
within 30 to 45 minutes of sunrise and he lost weight and he didn't change anything else.
Wow.
So I'm just throwing this out there, and this is all I can do as a health coach, really, is to
Yes.
say, here's an idea,
Mm-hmm.
try it
Try it.
out, and see how
Right.
it works for you. But so that's only one of the 6 ancestral secrets that I like to share.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and that what you're talking about is red light therapy. Honestly, I tell my like I used to work with adolescents before I just went to adults only, and that's something that I would say, okay, here's your prescription. All right, you're unplugging everything around your head. What? That's stupid. I'm like, because they have lights everywhere. They
Oh
have all
gosh.
so it's like, okay, and you're going to put your phone out of your room by like 9 o'clock. And it's the hardest thing for a lot of us because I was back
Hmm.
then addicted, like it just happens until right?
Yep,
And
yep.
so I love that. You were talking about red light therapy. Like if you own the morning, you own the day.
Oh my gosh, yes. And how much nicer is it to start the day on your own terms?
Mm,
So when you start off with your phone, you're reacting to either good news, bad news, maybe a little
yes.
amusement stuff on there and TikTok or what have you, but you're reacting. But if you go outside, you actually have time to think, to
Hmm.
breathe. It
Yes.
lowers your cortisol, your stress level. Nature has so many wonderful things to offer us, but I had no idea. And so, yeah, so the sun, and then I'm glad you mentioned sleep because that's one of my ancestral secrets too. Everywhere I've gone in the world, people honor their sleep in a different way. In
Mm,
Ethiopia and even in Mongolia, I remember once the sun went down, that was it. The yurts or gurs that the people were living in, they didn't have electricity for the most part. So they would just maybe have a little candle or a gas lamp or actually a lamp fueled by the yak manure going. And then once they put that out, that was it. And so they were just so healthy and robust. Do you know that the
mm,
Mongolian people are the ones that conquered other empires? I think it's in part because they honored their sleep and they got the right amount of sun. And they were actually also doing cold adaptation. I call shivers another one of the secrets. It's freezing over there in between Russia and China and most of the
hmm.
year. So, yeah, they have coats and stuff, but they're facing the elements. I think we've just gotten far too comfortable. So the 17-year-old that you were describing on their
Mm,
phone in their cozy room with all the lights on,
right.
their body has no idea what time of year it is, what time of day it is, and no
Hmm.
wonder they're in a brain fog and
Yeah.
discouraged. So,
Yeah.
honoring our circadian rhythm, getting that morning sun, honoring our sleep, turning off the lights at night, avoiding our screens if possible, and if not, just wear blue blockers, but do what you can so that you can really get back in a rhythm that serves your mind and your body.
Yes, I love that. And I'm not going to ask for the other secrets because if you do want to know, you are going to, and I'll put all her information in the show notes, so you'll have to sign up.
Yes, yes, because I
And
have a course. Now I do put a lot of
oh,
stuff for free, because I,
oh,
I want to help
good.
everybody,
Oh,
obviously. But
yes.
I do have a course where I try to help people actually, it's part course, part challenge, implement these hacks because once
Hmm.
you feel it, there's
Right.
nothing like it. This is why at Costco they will give you samples of the food because they know once you taste it, you're like, I'm going to put that in my
Yes.
cart, right? So it's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's like, let's feel what it feels like to
Right.
honor our circadian rhythm. Let's feel like what it feels like to nourish ourselves deeply with the nutrient dense foods and so forth. So we kind of walk hand in hand through a course. It's only 6 weeks long, but I think that's enough to establish a few healthy habits. And even if you only pick one of the six, you're still on a better track than you were before you took the course.
Wow, Hilda, I'm telling you, the you and I are sisters from another mister. Because honestly, like that's what I tried to do. This is what I've done now as a therapist for a long time because I have seen just in my own field what has been done in the mental health crisis that we're in right now. And that's why, 4 years ago, I started my practice and I'm like, I'm going to go holistic. I'm going to go against the grain. Like right now, I am on a grounding mat,
Ah,
barefooted.
nice.
And once I'm done with you, I will go outside and stand on the grass.
I
Yeah,
have a little story to tell because sometimes the
sure.
listeners are like, okay, health stuff, health stuff, health stuff. Talk to me about weight
Yes.
loss. I've got 20 extra pounds. I can't handle it. All right,
Right.
here's a tip. So I was just talking to a friend of mine and he said, Hilda, I ate a huge stack of pancakes at midday under fluorescent light. And I had a little continuous glucose monitor to see like what happened to his blood sugar. And of course, it
Mhm.
spiked up. He said, I had the same meal in the sunlight. He said, and my blood sugar remained stable. And so, why am
Whoa.
I bringing this up? This has to do with insulin resistance. So, not exactly the weight gain thing, but I'm sure that's related.
Hmm.
Basically, if you eat outside, your digestion improves. So, when you have the chance, and I would say probably 3 of the 4 seasons, you can still do this, eat outside. Eat
Right.
outside and see the difference it makes. If nothing else, it gets you in that parasympathetic mode, that rest and digest mode. Notice it's
Mm-hmm.
called rest and digest, so that
Right.
your body can better make use of the nutrients you're taking in. How many times do we eat on the run in the car or standing up like we're horses, and we're
Or in
not in
front
the
of our
right
screens.
mode?
In front of our
Yes.
screens, or we're
Oh
there
my
at work
gosh.
and working, and you're just, oh, let me hurry up and get whatever I
Yes.
can. And
Eating on our computer. Oh my gosh, I
yes,
can't imagine something worse. So, and hashtag, guilty. Like, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but
exactly.
I've learned enough to know I
Hmm.
need to take the time.
Yeah.
Because as you said, I either, invest in my health now, giving it time and attention and sometimes money with the food, right? Or
Hmm.
I pay the doctor later. I'd much rather do the former.
Right. And so this is holistic mental health, right? And I'm a therapist. And so my listeners, a lot of them are wanting to know, how do they help themselves without, because sometimes medication, and I understand, I have to say that, like, there is a place. Sometimes you are in a
Mhm.
place, like our listeners might be in a place where, like we're talking about, is like they are overwhelmed, they're so depressed, they're in that brain fog, they're so anxious, and they just don't know what to do or where to start. What would you say to them?
Oh, I understand that point of desperation where you're so low
Mm,
and you're just confused. And so who are you going to listen to? You are going to listen to your healthcare practitioner or your psychologist or psychiatrist or whoever
mhm.
you're turning to. And so this is in no way, shape, or form meant to discount that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that in the indigenous people groups that I have visited, the people are happy and healthy. And what if you could actually get to that place naturally? I mean, you would
Mm,
save money. You
yeah.
would save time. I know because I've had friends on that kind of treadmill of visiting doctors,
Yes.
and they feel like they're spending all of their money and all of their time chasing health.
Hmm.
Again, I like what you said. I think there is a time for meds that only the individual can know when that is. But I will say this. I interviewed a woman named Angie who was a former military officer or soldier, and she had
Wow.
terrible PTSD. And she was the subject of a movie called Medicating Normal. And
Wow.
what happened was she was near suicidal. And so she'd get one med and still be struggling. So they're like, okay, we'll tweak that dose or we'll give you this other med. And the movie had case after case. Angie was not the only person where the doctors don't have all the answers either. And maybe I
Exactly.
can say that because I don't have a license. But
I
I've got
don't,
nothing
I
to
know I
lose,
have one, and I know I tell my clients all the time, like, you're
right?
you're with yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Who knows you the best? And I try
Exactly.
and I try to get them connected to creator. Like, to me, I'm a believer.
Yes.
So it's like
Yeah, me
God,
too. Me
Jesus,
too.
but for them, I'm not going to force that on, but they need to
No,
understand
no.
there's a higher power out there that's there, that created this earth, this beautiful
Yes.
earth.
And their beautiful bodies. So
Yes.
there are two things I want to tell you. One is when I was in Ecuador, I met a partera and a curandera, a
Ooh.
healer and a midwife, who told me over and over again, nuestro cuerpo es sagrado. Nuestro cuerpo
Mm,
es sagrado, which means our body is holy. And I
yeah.
thought, oh my goodness, if people could somehow see how they have been touched by the divine, that there is
Yes.
not an accident. They're not here by accident. They're here with
Right.
intention. Because I think sometimes, Diana, we start to feel so small and like, oh, I'm so messed up. I'm beyond hope. Oh, no, 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 no. No, you're not. You're here for a reason. You are not out of reach of God's arm and hope's arm's length away. It's all right
Yes.
there. So that's one thing I want to say. And then the other thing I want to say is God has actually given us the tools to live our healthiest lives. And
Yes.
some are right in front of us. And N equals one. And when I say that, I mean this. Someone might show you a whole length of studies, and hey, this study seems to show that this med will help, or this study shows that these people, did better with this. You are a study group of one and a control group of one. So take this challenge of getting the sunrise sun before you start scrolling for 2 weeks only and see what happens. And I will tell you in my own life, my husband laughed at me when I told him I'm going to start doing the sunrise. He thought it was ridiculous. I was a night owl. I'm a Latina. So I've always felt like I'm wired for the late night. My dad still stays up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. He's just crazy. So I thought, well, that's how Latins do. When I started this experiment, It was in 2018, or I think, and I never looked back. In
Yeah,
other words, I get the sunrise sun every single
me
morning.
too. Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely transformed my life and my
Yes.
health only for the better. So, what if we didn't need a pill, a prescription, a program, or a physician? What if our good health was available from
Mm,
beautiful natural health hacks? And so, again, I'm not a medical professional, but I will say, why not give this a try? You have nothing to lose.
right. And so much to gain. Because
Mm.
honestly, and you said you're Latina. Where from?
Yeah, my mom is from Mexico and my dad is from Cuba. So I
Ah,
was raised with that blood, Latin blood, 100% in the United States. So I'm like a
yeah.
100% Latin-blooded American.
Yeah, me too. My mom's from Colombia and my dad's Puerto Rican.
Hey,
Ah, wow. So that's pretty cool. All
yeah, qué
right.
sorpresa.
Yeah. Well, well, I think I can speak Spanish, but it's like very American.
Oh,
No, yo te comprendo todo. Sí, yo te
ajá.
comprendo, pero I can never be a translator. I speak Spanglish. All
Okay,
right.
okay. That works. That works.
All right. So, what are the top three takeaways you'd like the listeners to remember from today's discussion?
So I've been thinking a lot about mental health lately,
Mm,
and overall health. I've actually been reading a book by David Goggins called Can't Hurt Me.
I read
This
that.
guy is as tough as nails, right? Tough as nails.
Yeah.
You guys, he had to try out for the Navy SEALs like 3 times.
Yeah.
One time he got sidelined because I think they found he had this sickle cell anemia gene. Another
Mhm.
time, I think he actually fractured both of his tibia, like crazy stuff, but he would not give up. So I'm like, where did he get that resilience?
Yeah.
When he had haters coming at him, he used it as like fuel for the fire of like, I'm going to show them. So that was his
Mhm.
attitude. At the same time, I've been reading this book called The Story of a Soul by a saint from the 14th century. No, I'm sorry, maybe
Wow.
not even that far back, from the 19th or 18th century, Therese de Lisieux. And she had her haters too. Believe it or not, even nuns in convents have haters. And what she did was she just took it over to God. She would just give it over to God. And she's like, okay, Mother Superior misunderstood me today. Literally, it's her journal. Like, okay, she's walking in the convent, and Mother Superior is like, hey, does this child have nothing to do but walk around the convent all day? Therese did not defend herself. She was actually going to the garden because another nun had told her to do so, to do some weeding, but she didn't defend herself. She was like, kind of just offering up to God, saying, thank you, God, that I'm not the pet of this convent. Thank you that there are things I can learn here. And
Mm,
so I've been inspired by both of these to remember that we basically have a say in how we experience the world around us. We
mm,
have a choice. We don't
yes.
have to be victims.
Mm,
We can choose to be showing up strong, empowered, ready to go, regardless of circumstances. Some of the freest people I've ever heard of are people that were in the Nazi concentration
yes.
camps. How could they be free under
Right.
that oppressive, horrific situation?
Yeah.
Because of their mind and their
Yes.
heart. So what I do, because I have my haters too. I guess Holistic Hilda has haters. I'll start an Instagram called that one day. I'm like, okay, you can hate on me, but I'm not so much about using it as fuel. I'm going to show you. I'm more of
Oh,
the surrender. And I
right.
also try to remember who I am. So not only do I get the morning sun every day, Diana, but I also write in my gratitude journal.
Hmm.
I write things I'm thankful for because I think gratitude is a
Yes.
key for turning things around. I am
Yes.
grateful that that person gave me a hard time because it shows me I need to stay humble. It reminds me to love people no matter what. Like there's so many lessons. I write things in my gratitude journal that I'm not feeling thankful for, but I'm
Hmm.
trusting that God is going to use for good. So I would say
Yes.
one, remember that your mindset and your heart make a difference. You're not a victim of your circumstance. Two, be grateful. And I would say the third thing is you do need to find a way and a place to have your cup filled up because I can't be loving to the people around me if I don't feel
Yes.
loved up.
That's
I
right.
need to, again, I find my time in my devotional time in the mornings through prayer and reading the word. I have community around me that lifts me up in prayer and says encouraging things to me so that I'm ready to face the next day, and it's not always perfect, but I
Mm,
do my best to show up in love and light. And that's the other thing too. So I also I do have some affirmations that I repeat often. Also prayers. Like I do the Lord's Prayer all the time, Psalm 23, different prayers that I hold on to.
Yeah.
St. Julian of Norwich would say, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. I repeat those along with affirmations to remind me how I live in this world. One is, I wish the best for myself and others. And
Mm.
I get specific, Diana, if it's someone who's like said something unkind or that's I'm mad at or whatever, I'll be like, I wish the best for myself and Kathy, or I wish the best for myself
Yeah.
and David, whoever it is, they comes to mind. I just put that out there because it reminds me, oh yeah, I can make choices that are different because I'm empowered to let that love and light shine. So these are things I hope that are of some help. That might be more than three, but I hope it helps somebody remember
No,
you're
keep
not
it
a
coming.
victim.
Yeah.
You're
Keep
not a
it coming,
victim.
girl.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
Hold on to what's true.
Yeah.
Find community and ways to have your cup filled up so that you can bring love and light to the world and live your best life. Because if we go around in victim mode now, I'm preaching now, but if you go around like, oh man, like, whatever, my girlfriend broke up with me, or,
Hmm.
oh man, I
I
didn't
can't,
get that
right? Or I
job.
can't
What?
do this,
Yes,
or
okay. So that's the story you're telling yourself.
hmm.
And if you hold on to that, follow the trail. Where is that taking you? You're
Yeah.
going to be resentful, you're going to be disgruntled and unhappy. But
Yes.
what if all those same circumstances,
Mm.
instead of that, you said to yourself, huh, that girl didn't like me. Okay, I'm gonna just, keep on the lookout for whoever God has in mind. Or, that job prospect didn't pan out. I'm gonna keep knocking on doors because I think the right one is gonna be there at the right time.
Right.
You've got to hold on to hope, because where does that lead you? It leads you to openness and
Hmm.
happiness and joy. You're not defeated. Anyway, a failure or a setback is only temporary. It's only as long as you make it. So don't make it a permanent setback, whatever you do. Life is too short for that to happen.
Yeah, it is. It's just like Ecclesiastes. That's one of my favorite books. And people are like, whoa, that's a depressing book. And I'm like, well, if you really understand it and read it, at first it is depressing. Like we're all only a vapor. That's just
Yep.
smoke, you know? But if you really
Mm-hmm.
understand that, no, we have a sovereign God who has it under control, and we're here for a purpose. And it's up to you to either stay in the ego, the flesh, or go in the spirit and be surrendered to going, okay, how are you going to use me as a vessel today?
Oh my gosh,
Right?
that's so beautiful. Yes. And I'm not saying it's easy.
No,
Even
it's,
Jesus on the cross was like, my God, why have you forsaken me? He
yeah.
was doing it for love.
Hmm.
But he was having his moments, right? So we do too. And I think I used to kind of bypass those feelings, but I've realized that the abundant life that he describes in John 10:10 is both the lows and the highs. We need that
Yes.
contrast so that we can better rejoice on the highs and better come to him and turn to others in vulnerability for
Yeah.
community in the lows.
Exactly. Yeah, you hit it. I mean, you're talking about radical acceptance. You're talking about red light. There, you are holistic, Hilda. I love it. You're talking about it all. I mean, nutrition, the mind. This is what I tell my clients. I'm like, you're hiring me to help you with your biology, psychology, and theology.
Oh, I love that so much. That's beautiful. We are sisters from another mister.
Yeah, for real, Hilda. So I know that time is short and I do have to go and you do too. And I love this conversation. Any last final words?
I really have to come back to the words of St. Julian of Norwich, that
Mm,
however dark today feels, know that there's a happy ending to the story. It's all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Hold on to that truth. If you need to repeat it daily, put it on your mirror. The ending is not with the haters on top or evil winning. Not by a long stretch.
that's right.
Anything that you're going through that makes you feel like I'm not going to make it through. Think of it as the moment in the movie where all the moviegoers are on the edge of their seat. Like, is the protagonist going to make it? And just know that, yes, you will.
Yeah.
Yes, you will. And all shall be well.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. All right, Hilda, I thank you so much. And thank you, listener. And don't ever forget to trust in the Lord, guard your heart, and renew your mind. Bye. And now for the disclaimer to make sure you understand that you are responsible for you. The content provided on the Holistic Counselor podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are my personal opinions and do not represent the views of any professional organizations with which I am affiliated. Call your doctor, 911, or 988 immediately if you have a medical emergency. The Holistic Counselor podcast does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the podcast. Reliance on any information provided by the Holistic Counselor podcast, guests appearing on the podcast at the invitation of the Holistic Counselor podcast, or other listeners to the podcast is solely at your own risk. Confidentiality notice. If you engage with the Holistic Counselor podcast by commenting or posting and are a client, please be aware that you may be revealing information that could compromise your confidentiality. Please remember that disclosing your identity or personal details can be linked to your clinical material. As a therapist, I am bound by confidentiality and will not respond to any disclosures of this type on this podcast. I am committed to upholding the ethics and confidentiality of the therapeutic relationship, which extends to all forms of communication in accordance with the laws and professional guidelines that govern mental health professionals. I want you to know that your privacy is of utmost importance, and you are responsible for protecting it when interacting on this platform or any other public forum. Thank you.